does it mean to live generously? For me personally, living generously is all about three elements of our lives, and that's first of all that we actually have time in our lives. We have who we are, what we offer to people, what we can do, and then we also have money. Money is in everybody's life, and how we deal with that is all centred around generosity as well. But for me, one of the keys is that it's actually not just being generous out in the open, it's being generous within your family and within that close-knit area. In all those three areas, both with money and your time and who you are and what you do. Next, it's important to be generous in those areas in the next level out, your broader family. And then wider than that, it's actually in the village that you're placed in. Who's there, the people you know, whether it be at church or at work, wherever it is. It's actually being generous in all of those areas, in those three areas of life.
Yeah, our circumstances over the years have changed. So we've gone from having a very high income and being able to provide and support a lot of people, financially and generously in opening up our homes and things like that. Then with Ashley getting sick for many years and being on disability pension for 10 years and raising 4 children in that time, of course we were brought to different circumstances where of course we didn't have the financial provision that we had before, and even finding money for milk and bread, so $2 was a real stretch, and our children went without a lot. They went to the movies once a year and the grandparents paid for it, so that's how basic life was. But in the midst of all that, there was still an aspect of generosity that we were generous where we could be. So for me, one of the things that I really felt very passionately about was supporting a compassion child, and so that was money that we really needed in our own home, but it was something that I really felt in my heart that I wanted to make a difference somewhere else in somebody else's life, and that and you come back to the point of trusting God for your needs, and we've got so many amazing stories of God's provision, so that as I was faithful in doing what was on my heart, and that was supporting a compassion child, and we opened up our home, and had home group and catered for that. So it wasn't the huge financial giving, but we were still generous in our time, and generous in our time with our family and our home. So yeah, that's probably...
That's good. So as far as living out generosity in our family, one of the keys for me was both mentoring and showing my children, who are now, the eldest is almost 25, and we've got 4 children altogether down to 15, and just showing them the importance of giving, and for me the importance of tithing. And that principle, we displayed that to them and showed that to them, and now they also, as they have gotten into the workforce, they are starting to give as well. And that has been a great encouragement to me, to see that lived out. So it's not just the principles that I follow, it's the principles that I've mentored and shown to my family that they follow also, and that's meant a lot to me.
I think it's also seeing God's provision in and God's faithfulness to us. So as we've stepped out and done things that sometimes people think, well, you need the money yourself or whatever, but you've been faithful in doing what you can, whether it's actually volunteering your time, whether it's opening up your home, whether it's in hospitality, whether it's in supporting a compassion child, whether it's in tithing. We have seen God's faithfulness to us time and time again, and we have never gone without. We have had every single need that we've had met, and there's a big difference between needs and wants, but God has even provided amazing miracles in provision. So, yeah.
The light bulb moment for me was quite some time ago, probably about 20 odd years ago, and and I was reading through Philippians, and it said, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, and coming in the likeness of men." It was that verse that really just hit me how much he gave up. And when I realised how much he gave up to come down here, it was like this light bulb moment of he gave up everything for me. And so it was this, my goodness me, everything is his. And here I am holding on tight-fisted to money, and I can't let go of it. I'm not generous with it. I'm not generous with my time. I'm not generous with a whole series of elements of my life. And he did this for me. My response had to be that I would give also. And through life since then, I think I've lived a life that's been far more giving of myself with that light bulb moment.
I don't think I really had a light bulb moment. I think for me it was very much displayed in my mother. My parents weren't very well off, and even to this day they're still renting and struggling financially on the pension. And Mum is the sort of person that she will give you anything, you know, and she's always been really generous that way. And I think always being very considerate and thoughtful of other people. And I think I was raised in that sort of an environment, so very much a heart and an awareness of other people. And as I've walked my Christian journey, I think more and more, I think it's just resonated that what we are given here on earth is for us to be stewards of, and that, you know, and to use the gifts and talents and the money that we've been given wisely. And it's not necessarily just for ourselves. And like I said before, I think there's a big difference between our needs and wants. And having lived on the pension for 10 years and bringing up a family, I realise that there are so many things that we want, but it's not necessarily just what we need. And I've learnt to be very content with my needs, my family, good health, and everything else is a bonus, and it's to be used. Yeah.
If I was to answer what should our response be to God's generosity, I think we really need to come back to the simplicity of who it is we're talking about. God, sovereign God, owner of all things in the whole universe. And perchance he puts some of that into our hand in the sense of money, in the sense of our talents and abilities, and in the sense of the time that we have on earth. My feeling is, and my verse in Philippians that just says he gave up everything, our response needs to be one of giving generously.
I think it's, for me, out of a heart to honour our Lord, you know, and in thankfulness for what he's given us, and always blessed, not necessarily financially in how the world would like to think, that we don't serve God because we get financial reward, and but he blesses us in so many other ways. And I just think I couldn't think of living life any other way. It's nothing to say. Yeah, I think if you're waiting for a perfect time to be able to give, I don't think there is any such thing as a perfect time. We're all in different circumstances, as we've seen in our life. We've gone through different seasons and different circumstances, and we're not saying that everybody can give financially. You know, maybe that's not your season, and we understand that, having walked that our own journey, that we were able to give in other areas and things like that. But if you're waiting for a perfect season to give and live generously, I don't think there is such a thing. I think it's just embracing where you are you know, what circumstances you're in now and doing what you can today. I think it's, you know, whether you can open up your house and be hospitable, whether it's being able to give financially, whether it's being able to just listen to somebody. And I've been in circumstances where when Ash was really sick, I couldn't give anything other than keep my family together. And that was being generous to my family. And that took all my focus and all my strength and all my energy. And I think God understands that. And I don't think people should feel burdened because of where they are in their circumstances. And like I said, you know, there's no such perfect time. We've got lots of things that need fixing in our house. If you look at it from a worldly aspect, you know, we are so far behind the 8 ball financially. And yet, you know, there are more important things in life. You know, this house will fall apart one day, it won't be here, but what we impart in other people's lives, in our children's lives, in our families' lives, in our friends' lives, in lives of children that we support overseas, you might never be able to see that's eternal differences.
I think one of the things that really hits me is probably the difference that we find ourselves in now that I'm back working again and Rita's working, and compared to when I was on disability pension. And I worked out the other night that I actually give as much now as I was earning back then. And it just made me realise our circumstances in life change so much, but that Jesus was able to look through and look at the widow and look at the 2 mites and to see the heart that it was given under, and that really ministers to me. And I think Rita, you know, as she shared, you know, the journey a little bit, it really hits me that it's not about how much you're giving, it's about what you're giving in the context of where you're at. And that can be in money, time, talent, everything. Whatever that context is, I think I can only agree with Rita, don't wait, give. Give of yourself, give of your resources, because a generous giver is just the best thing.
I guess the biggest story of God's provision is when Ash was sick. We actually had enough money to go and buy a brand new car, a Kia Carnival, which we sort of was thinking that it's going to last us till maybe Ashley gets better or something like that. And anyway, the car after 3 years was a total dud. 55,000 kilometres on the clock, brand new car, serviced regularly. And it was basically a write-off. Kia fixed it up the first time. It was about $9,000 to get the engine rebuilt. 15,000 kilometres later, the engine went again. They refused to fix it up, and it was eventually found out that it was a fault of the car. But basically, we didn't have $8,000 to fix up this car. And basically, we were left with a car that was $37,000 brand new and was totally worthless. And Ash was on the pension, and we were able to go to the bank and scrape enough money together to actually get a loan. And we'd set a top price on the loan that we wanted. And we were sort of thinking for the price that we had, we'd probably get a station wagon with dicky seats in the back and things like that. And me being, I don't know, it was a bit, how do you put it? I like nice cars. And yeah, so station wagon didn't quite cut it with dicky seats. It was like, you know, and I was just praying to God and in the midst of all this, and I just thought, you know, we looked at different cars. There was a Mazda MPV that I really liked, but we couldn't afford it. And I thought, you know, well, God, in your mercy and grace, you know what we need, you know. And if I have to have a station wagon, because that's all we can afford, please make it aqua green with tinted windows and alloy wheels, you know. And that was my vanity speaking, you know. It was like, please make it a nice colour. And And anyway, we went to Ashley's cousin who had an auction yard, and because he told us a car had come through and we went to have a look at it, and it ended up being a dud. He told us, no, I'm not going to sell you that car. And we were really disappointed. And he said, but by the way, I've just had another car come through. We haven't cleaned it up, we haven't checked it, but you might want to come and have a look at it. And we walked around the corner, and here was a Mazda MPV aqua green tinted windows with alloy wheels for the top price that we had set on what we would actually end up buying. And I was just so flabbergasted. I was like, it's pretty nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing that God cares about those little things. So even my vain little story about having a car that looks nice, he cares. And you know, there's been times where prayers haven't been answered the way I want, but you know, that was for me at that time just one of those things that, you know, I'm with you, you know. So you talk about not being able to provide. We spent a long time not being able to provide for our family, and of course, like any parent, you desire to give your children the best, but circumstances were that, you know, financially we couldn't. And Mark, our second eldest, was probably about 8 at the time and desperately wanted a pet, wanted a dog, and we just didn't have the money to buy a dog. Like I said, we were struggling to put milk and bread on the table. You know, we go to the school and talk to the business manager to have our school fees cut, and that was in a public school because we couldn't afford the fees, and so it was really, really rough. But Mark wanted a dog, and lo and behold, he was praying, and one day we went out the front, and here's this staffy sitting on our front doorstep. And staffies are notorious for wandering. And I said to the kids, don't touch the dog, don't feed it, don't do anything, because it doesn't belong here. Like, you know, it'll go home where it belongs. And
it didn't go home.
3 days, that dog sat on our doorstep and did not wander anywhere. And I had given up water by this stage, but we left it out the front. And phoned up the pound, asked them if anybody had lost a staffy. Nobody had lost a staffy, and they said, look, bring it in. And I said, look, I'm happy to keep the dog here, you know, until somebody comes and claims it. And 3 months went by, nobody had come through and claimed it, and they said, you can have the dog. So Mark got a dog for nothing. And I think, so you talk about God providing, and it's like, you know, even our children's prayers, you know, he cares about so far more than we care for our children, because, you know, they're his children. And it's like far beyond what we can imagine.
He's an infinitely generous God.
And I think we find it very easy to be able to give to other people. We all like to be in that position. Let me tell you, when we were both on really good incomes, and we were so stoked to be able to bless other people and see the blessing that brought in their life. It's so much harder to actually be on the other side and to receive. But God told me one day that, you know, if you don't receive, how can those that have be blessed in giving? And it has to go both ways. And so we've sat on both sides, and I think we've realised that it's not just about giving financially, it's giving in so many other areas. It's giving of your time, it's giving of your wisdom, it's giving of opening up your house. And maybe there are times where you can't give, you know, and people just need to feed into you. And that's okay, because God understands the different seasons too, you know. There's been another story of being blessed. I mean, Ashley's car, his MPV, has 300,000 kilometres on the clock. It's seriously, it's time exhausted. But, you know, we don't have the money. You know, we're recovering from all these years of hardship, and, you know, we're doing all right, but, you know, it's like there's no extras. And it's sort of like a family member on Ash's side has turned around and sort of said to us, Ashley's mum actually has turned around and said, you
Here's some
know,
money.
that here's
Go
some
and buy
money,
a car.
go and buy a car. And it'll come out of our inheritance, you know, but it's like, that,
Yeah.
here's some money.
So
go
that
and
was a
get yourself
complete
a new
shock.
car. You think, you know,
Yeah. You don't ask for things and they just arrive. You think, okay, thanks God. That's good because it's getting pretty old out there and it's making weird groans.
I don't like driving a wheel of a car as well, to be honest.
That's right.
Flies around the corner. It's so embarrassing.
and I think we like to be so efficient and capable and, you know, provide for ourselves, but it's actually been really quite amazing sitting on this side and knowing that there are things that you can't provide, and just watching God open the doors and bring miracles like that into your life that you can just think, blows your mind. Blows your mind. And I mean, we were so blessed once to be able to be on the other side, but I think there's blessing in giving and there's blessing in receiving. I think it's all under God's hands, His love and His grace.